Hands up those of you who remember my prediction from the last Nephilim video. Here it is. I predict that should Nephilim provide a response, it will be fucktarded. This will cement my theory that Nephilim is a fucktard. So with that in mind, let's take a look at his response. This reply was long, really long, 4 sides of A4 in size 12 times New Roman. So this video will likely be quite long as well, maybe even 2 parts. I'm making it up as I go along. Here's some coffee for the journey. Personally, I can't stand coffee, so instead I'm resisting the urge to down a bottle of Tennessee's Finest in order to mentally bring myself down to Nephi's level and understand what the buggering hell he's on about. First, some general comments on the general reply. Generally speaking, it's a classic example of Nephi's tactics. If someone like me provides evidence, ignore it and bombard them with every spastic shred of fuckwittery at your disposal, in the hopes that they'll have so much to respond to they won't bother to make the effort. This looks like a copy-paste of every single one of his arguments that he's likely sent to several people who have messaged him, spelling errors left intact.
What? English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
Well, here's some news then, Nephi. I'm replying. Gauntlet thrown, gauntlet taken. This shall be the ultimate Nephilim debunkage.
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
Firstly, I already know that you cling to evolution not because of science, but because it's your religion faux materialism, which you need to protect for your conscience from what it knows, that God exists, because you do not want to be subject to God's authority. However, here's some information about genetics that puts evolution into the toilet where it belongs. Learn from it. No, you learn from it, you festering slug of preposterous effluence. I told religion to take one big, wet, sloppy kiss of my scrotum long before I knew anything about evolution, and I'd rather spend a passionate weekend away in Birmingham with Anne Widdecombe's arse hairs than spend a single moment in the service of the vile lunatic you call a god. Now get the fuck on with the actual point.
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
Genetics has discredited evolution and proven empirically that both design and sexual creation are fact, because DNA is verified to be genetic information, and information is not bound to its medium, is immaterial and exists prior to the medium which is thereafter created to convey it. This proves both design and special creation. There is nothing an evolutionist can do to change this fact revealed by modern science. Darwin just could not have known. Nephilim, of course, will only ever consider a single definition of information. Anyone dissenting and providing actual definitions gets told that they're changing the definition to suit their evolutionist neo-Darwinist agenda. This is, of course, one of the largest indicators of Nephilim's well-established hypocrisy and projection. As I've said before in these 2 videos directed towards Nephilim's ironically ill-informed information escapades, when we describe the process of DNA translation we use information as a metaphor, an explanatory phrase to help us conceive what's happening. Nephilim is persistent in his utter incapacity to even try to understand how DNA actually works, and this denialism trait of his with regards to information has come into play several times during his reply. All I really need to do here is once again state that there is no conscious entity making any decisions with what to do. It's all the automated reactions between biological molecules, reactions guided by the structure of these molecules and their chemistry.
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
The Hox genes that produce fins in most fish and limbs in most amphibian tetrapods have different gene numbers in different locations in the genome. This is true also between amphibians and reptiles and mammals. This discredits the claim that heredity exists between these families of life, as evolution claims. Using Hox genes in a counter-argument to evolution is a lot like trying to counter a house fire by covering the carpet in petrol, filling the rooms with dried wood, and then going mental with a full inventory of Molotov cocktails. Our knowledge of Hox genes comes from an investigation into genetics under the understanding that species have evolved from a common ancestry, and it has led to an incredible amount of progress in research, even in a new field of evolutionary developmental biology. Now, I'm not going to attempt to sum up what Hox genes are and how they work in 30 seconds for this video, but basically they trigger transcription of some genes while repressing others. Suffice to say, it doesn't really matter where in a species' genome the Hox genes are found. What matters is that the genes themselves are highly conserved between species. What this means is that the process of setting up the anterior-posterior axis of animals has been conserved throughout evolution in the animal kingdom. The protein products of Hox genes are so similar that you can swap mouse Hox genes, which trigger growth of the eye, with the genes of a fruit fly, and retain the fly's ability to trigger eye growth. There are plenty more examples, including chickens no less. Animal development is a subject that's hard to conceive at first, but beautifully elegant in its simplicity once you grasp the basic principles. It's going to be one of those I'll cover it in another video moments. Oh yeah, before I forget, study of Hox genes, animal development and genetics confirms evolution is fact beyond reasonable doubt. Sorry to disappoint. Needless to say, Nephilim, your doubt is unreasonable and so is your face. Next question.
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
Brian Sykes, an eminent professor of genetics at Oxford University, states that the Y chromosome, which causes males to develop, is fatally flawed and cannot be repaired and will disappear in about 125,000 years. This verifies that evolution is false, because if evolution were true and man is the highest order of life, our genome should be improving instead of heading for extinction. The fossil record supports this statement by demonstrating that life was bigger and healthier in the past and that all life is heading for extinction. This argument was brought to you by the number 6, the letter F, and the workshop of stupid. Nephilim is stating here that our genome is deteriorating, with the Y chromosome fatally flawed and unrepairable. We have no option other than assuming Nephilim actually believes this is true, since he used it in his crackpot argument against evolution. Unfortunately for Captain Spud, this totally counters nearly every point he's ever made against genetic mutations and repair systems. A little consistency in your arguments, Neff, would go a long way, and let's face it, you've yet to turn up for the race, let alone set a foot over the start line. Evolution says nothing whatsoever about any species being the highest order, so we'd have no problem whatsoever if the human race died out. As such, there is absolutely no reason to assume our genome must do anything, improve or not, other than the effects of selection on populations. And if you had put any thought whatsoever into this, Neff, you'd realise that surely degradation of our genome and the possible extinction of our species totally stands against the absurdity of a creation specifically designed for humanity.
Where's your God now?
Finally, I've got to point out the irony of a creationist trying to use a fossil record to counter evolution. There is no evidence at all that life was healthier in the past, and let's face it, after all, the common trait shared by most species in the fossil record is that they are all fucking dead.
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
Genetic mutation is incapable of causing morphological change in species. The individual can be deformed, but the deformity disappears in the offspring in 1 to several generations depending upon the species. The homeobox genes are guarded by DNA error correction. They are replaced by this ingenious process and the animal returns to its wild type without fail. No permanent change to the morphology of any species has ever been permanent in 70 years of genetic experimentation. So exactly how many generations are you waiting for these guys to revert to their wild type?
Hello, in there, are you awake? I'm talking to you. Are you listening?
Geneticist Dr. Herbert Nilsson, Professor of Botany at the University of London, Sweden, stated, "My attempts to demonstrate evolution by an experiment." Hang on a minute, but haven't we had this conversation before? Now on to the so-called geneticist Nephilim quoted. First, we must point out that any modern geneticist who had failed to gain any adaptive genetic changes in bacterial species in the lab for 40 years is one shit scientist. But we have to be fair to Dr. Nilsson. He did, after all, die in 1955. This is only 2 years after Watson and Crick suggested the double helix model of DNA, and 3 years before Francis Crick had laid out the central dogma of molecular biology, at which point the relationship between RNA and proteins was unknown. To put it bluntly, Nilsson is about as useful a source for any relevant genetics as half a goat that's been shot from a cannon into the side of Uranus. So basically, Nephi chose not to listen to my previous point whatsoever when he made his latest reply, showing how he really does put the ignore into ignorance. Now at this stage of making this video, I've only got about a minute left for the next point. I'm also fucking hungover, so you'll have to wait for part 2. Stay tuned.